African swine fever is currently a raging fire that must be extinguished. Dr. Livio Heath from ARC-Onderstepoort explains why biosecurity is the best defense. Daarna bring GP Heppell van Aartappels SA kykers op hoogte oor huidige marktendense as ook die prestasie van plaaslike aartappelproduksie die afgelope 2 maande. Maar voordat ons daarby uitkom, skakel ons nou eers oor na Lise toe vir die jongste landbounuus.
Elanco, we are driven by our vision of food and companionship, enriching life.
In today's news, the American agricultural sector posted its best export year ever in 2022, with international sales of US farm and food products reaching $196 billion. Final 2022 trade data released by the country's Commerce Department shows that US agricultural exports increased by 11% or $19.5 billion since the previous record set in 2021. This second consecutive year of record-setting agricultural exports is coupled with a record $160.5 billion in net farm income in 2022. The overall World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report continues to paint a broadly positive picture, with slight downward revisions in maize and rice harvest estimates. The 2022-23 global maize production is forecast at 1.15 billion tonnes, down 0.4% from January and 5% less than the 2021-22 season crop. This is mainly due to an expected smaller crop in the US, Ukraine and the European Union. The forecast for global wheat production for the same period stands at 78.3 million tonnes. This is marginally up from January's estimates and 1% higher than the previous season. The Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Barbara Creasy, recently published important regulations for implementation in the wildlife industry. One of the key changes is to the elephant norms and standards. These changes involve the strengthening of provisions relating to management plans, which are compulsory for owners or managers of elephants. These standards also provide more flexibility in terms of emergency management interventions. The leopard norms and standards have also been revised in a bid to reduce the impact of hunting on the stability of the leopard population, as well as to ensure that trophy hunting is carried out in an ecologically sustainable manner. The norms and standards also establish mechanisms to set a leopard hunting quota. And that's the news. As you have heard, our focus this morning is also on the African swine fever, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Livio Heath from the Agricultural Research Council. Livio, thank you very much for joining us. What exactly is African swine fever?
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. African swine fever is a disease of pigs specifically. It infects all species of pigs, but it's really a concern when the virus spreads to domestic pigs. The natural reservoir of the virus is actually warthogs, and interestingly enough, soft ticks or soft-bodied ticks of the genus Ornithodorus. So the virus infects both warthogs and soft-bodied ticks without causing any illness or disease within these hosts. But when the disease spreads to domesticated pigs, it actually causes severe losses of pigs due to hemorrhagic death and other consequences of the virus.
Yeah, we are aware of that. As I said, it is in South Africa. What is the present situation?
So the first description of African swine fever in southern Africa dates back to the early 1900s. It's been around in warthogs, in soft eggs since then. But it spread to domesticated pigs when they were introduced into southern Africa, specifically by the Portuguese colonizers. But in South Africa in 1935, we declared a ASF control zone in the northern parts of the country, restricting the distribution of African swine fever to the Limpopo province and the Mpumalanga province specifically. Unfortunately, in 2016, the disease moved beyond the control zone and spread into Gauteng, the Free State and the Northwest. And since then, since 2016, it's actually spread to all of the 9 provinces in South Africa. Currently, we have active outbreaks in the Western Cape, in the Eastern Cape, as well as in Gauteng. The real concern with regards to African swine fever is that it was previously restricted to typically rural areas and agricultural areas, but currently due to the changes in demographics in South Africa, the disease now also occurs in peri-urban areas where pigs are kept by landowners specifically as an additional source of income, and controlling the disease within these environments are extremely difficult. So South Africa faces significant problems currently with controlling the disease, and pig farmers, both small scale as well as commercial farmers, are suffering huge losses due to the disease.
How will a farmer know if they have this disease on their farm?
It's very difficult to diagnose just purely by clinical signs. Because of the way that the disease develops, pigs generally don't show any signs until they succumb to the disease. So the development of clinical signs are quite quick. So the pigs can die within 10 days after being infected with the disease. But typically what a farmer would see is that pigs would go off feed. They will stop eating. They'll become lethargic and huddle in groups, trying to keep warm. They'll shiver. And towards the end of the disease development, bruises appear on the hind legs and around the ears. Typically blue bruises. In severe cases, farmers will also notice bloody diarrhea just before death. But the onset of death is acute, and these animals succumb, as I said, within 10 days of being infected. What is important is that if a farmer sees large numbers of pigs dying unexpectedly without showing clinical signs, it's important for them to contact their veterinary officials, either the state veterinarian in the area or animal health technicians, to report it so that thorough investigations can be done around the deaths and ASF either be confirmed or ruled out as a cause of these deaths.
Livio, is there a vaccine available?
Unfortunately not in South Africa. Researchers across the world have been working on African swine fever vaccines for many, many years. It's a very complicated virus, and specifically because the virus actually evades the immune response and has mechanisms to suppress the immune response. So developing vaccines against these type of viruses are extremely difficult. However, fairly recently, within the last 2 to 3 years, the United States Department of Agriculture has developed an experimental vaccine that's currently undergoing testing in Asia. The disease spread to Asia in around about 2016, and since then there's been a lot of focus on trying to control it in that area, and the first large-scale field trials of this vaccine is currently ongoing. Hopefully, if the vaccine proves to be safe and efficacious, then it might be rolled out to other parts of the world, including Southern Africa.
Talking about control, what can a farmer do to prevent and control this, or rather prevent from it coming into their herd? Yes.
Well, that prevention is definitely the best cure. Currently, there's nothing really that you can do to rescue or salvage a herd that is infected by African swine fever. So preventing the introduction of the virus onto the farm by good biosecurity practices are what we recommend farmers do. This includes limiting access to the farm, making sure that fairly basic biosecurity principles are applied. Clothes changes, so using specific clothing and shoes before entering the pigsties, not allowing foreign or visitors onto the farm on a regular basis, visitors that do visit, make sure that they haven't been in contact with other pigs. Clean the cages often with a good disinfectant, and very importantly, monitor the pigs for signs of disease. It is also important, as I mentioned, the disease can be introduced through soft-bodied ticks. So if you do live in an area where these ticks occur, which is mostly towards the northern parts of Southern Africa or South Africa, it is important to set up your pens to prevent or limit the contact between domesticated pigs and these ticks.
Biosecurity.
Very
I think that. I think we've learned that in the past year. Thank you, Livio. Thank you for shedding some light on this topic.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all about African swine fever, and my guest today was Dr. Livio Heath from the ARC.
Ons stel bekend die nuwe, sterker as ooit tevore, 165 kW Hilux GR Sport.
Welkom terug vir al die boere, en ek wil vandag 'n bietjie 'n waarskuwing uitgee. Ek weet baie van die boere belê ook hulle geld, pensioengeld, in die plaaslike mark, en baie is lief om die top 40 indeks te koop. Maar daar is een aandeel op die oomblik wat baie swaar weeg in die top 40 indeks, en dit is die ou groot gunsteling Richemont. Dit is 'n maatskappy wat op massiewe kapitaal sit en 10 teen 1 baie hoër kan beweeg as wat hy nou is. Maar nou wil ek vir boere waarsku dat vir die oomblik van September laas jaar het hierdie aandeel gehardloop van R170 na R280 een week na die ander week hoër, en dit maak my so bietjie bekommerd. Ek wil amper sê dat ek is bekommerd want hierdie is 'n lampaalformasie, en 'n lampaalformasie het altyd geneig om 'n been af te gee, soos wat ons hier gesien het. Lampaalformasie, been af. So wees bekommerd as jy in die top 40 indeks belê. As Richemont gaan omdraai, ek dink hy is nou amper 16% van die indeks, dan gaan jou belegging dalk so 'n bietjie laer word. So miskien sê net vir jou fondsbestuurder, bietjie tyd om dalk winsies te neem en net so bietjie op die hande te sit, maar dit sê nie dat jy moet uit die mark uit wees nie. Dit sê maar net dat ons 'n waarskuwing kan kry, en waar sal daai waarskuwingsvlakke wees? Onthou, hierdie is 'n weeklikse grafiek. Met ander woorde, ons wag vir 'n weeklikse sluiting om dit te bevestig, en die eerste waarskuwingkie is om hier heel bo, ekskuus julle, is onder R280, gaan die eerste waarskuwing wees, en die tweede waarskuwing gaan wees by 265, ekskuus, 265,76, en as die prys onder druk kom, baie kan die aandeel gaan uit hierdie hoogte bereik van 246,40 en baie maklik afgaan dat R230. Hoekom? Nie omdat ek negatief is nie, maar die prys was in Desember op die vlakke van R230, so hy kan maklik terugtrek. Wel, besoek gerus ons webtuiste, jammer vir die pad aan my keel, www.fransdeklerk.com vir meer inligting, en ons gesels weer.
Goeiemôre dames en here, my naam is Heppell van Aartappels Suid-Afrika. Ek het onlangs begin, ek het Natal gekry as my streek in die Noord-Kaap. Ek gaan 'n markverslag doen. Vir die eerste 5 weke van 2023 is ongeveer 9,4 miljoen 10 kg sakkies aartappels verkoop en aartappels aan die mark te voorsien. Met voldoende aflewerings is daar steeds 'n tekort van 970.000 10 kg sakkies. Dit is minder as die vorige 5 jaar vir die eerste 5 weke van die jaar. Die gemiddelde prys vir hierdie tydperk is R20,79 meer as die vorige jaar. Dit was R55,41 per 10 kg sakkie, waar alle klasse in grootes. In Januarie 2023 was die gemiddelde daaglikse voorraadsvlakke op die varsproduktemark 712.000 10 kg sakkies per dag. Ongeveer 22.000 10 kg sakkies meer as Desember se gemiddelde daaglikse voorraadvlakke. Jaar op jaar het Januarie se gemiddeld voorraadvlakke met 29% afgeneem en daar was daagliks gemiddeld 239.000 10 kg sakkies minder beskikbaar. Die gemiddelde daaglikse prys gedurende Januarie 2023 het tussen R48.05 en R61.10 per 10 kg sakkie gewissel en het aansienlike hoër variasie as in 2022 vir dieselfde tydperk getoon. Die gemiddelde maandelikse prys het jaarliks met 24% gestyg. Die gemiddelde maandelikse prys vir alle groottes en klasse was R55.41. Die gemiddelde maandelikse prys vir klas 1 medium het op R57.79 per 10 kg sakkie geëindig. Die totale lewerings aan die varsprodukte mark vir Januarie 22 was ongeveer 7,8 miljoen 10 kg sakkies. Die streke wat die varsprodukte mark gedurende Januarie van die meeste aartappels voorsien het, is Suidwes Vrystaat, Noordwes, Oos Vrystaat, Gauteng en Sandveld. Van hierdie 5 streke was Suidwes Vrystaat, Noordwes en Gauteng die streke wie se afleweringe van Desember tot Januarie die meeste toegeneem het. Suidwes Vrystaat het die hoogste persentasie toename in afleweringe getoon. Sandveld afleweringe het met 45% afgeneem. As die klasverspreiding gedurende Januarie ontleed word, sal gesien word dat klas 1 78% van alle verkope uitgemaak het, wat 'n 4% afname in vergelyking met Desember se 82% was. Klas 2 en 3 het albei tussen 1 en 3% toegeneem, klas 4 het onveranderd gebly. Gedurende Januarie het groot medium en medium aartappels so wat 82% van verkope op alle markte verteenwoordig. Groot, medium, klein en baba aartappelverkope het afnames getoon, terwyl groot en klein medium aartappels verkope met onderskeidelik 5 en 1% gestyg het. In Januarie het verkope op 8,1 miljoen 10 kg sakkies geëindig. Januarie se verkope is 977.000 10 kg sakkies onder die 5 jaar gemiddeld verkope vir dieselfde maand. Suidwes Vrystaat was gedurende Januarie die markleier met 34% markandeel en het in Januarie 1,9 miljoen sakkies verkoop. Noordwes was die tweede grootste streek gedurende Januarie en het 29% van verkope verteenwoordig. Gauteng op 18%, Sandveld 11% en Oos Vrystaat gedurende November 8% markandeel gehad. Met 2023 aan die gang wens Aartappels Suid-Afrika 'n gelukkige en voorspoedige jaar toe.